Hello vinyl community, Mark here again from Sound Matters, talking all things vinyl as always. I'm still waiting to get these pictures back up on the wall, but I'm here again nonetheless with another turntable review for you today. We're going to take a look at the Fluance RT85N. So this is the one that comes with the Nagaoka MP-110 cartridge instead of the Ortofon 2M Blue. Looking forward to this one. Let's get straight into the review. The Fluance RT85 turntable sits at the top of the Referrence series by Fluance, which begins at the RT82 and moves incrementally up from there with small upgrades as you go up in the range. Originally, the RT85 shipped only with the Ortofon 2M Blue cartridge, which in itself is a superb cartridge at its price point, and I've used one for many years myself. That said, they do have a very distinct sound characteristic, and audio being the subjective thing that it is, it's not always going to be to everybody's taste. So this is where the N comes in our product name, because you can now order the RT85 pre-fitted with the Nagaoka MP-110 cartridge, which has a very different sound to the popular 2M Blue. Having recently reviewed the Fluance RT81 Plus turntable, which sits just before this Reference series of turntables, I'm very keen to see what you get when you step into the Reference series, but also how the MP110 compares to the 2M Blue in terms of sound. The core features of the Reference series turntables from the RT82 through to the RT85 remain essentially the same. The plinth, the motor, the tone arm, and also those suspended isolation feet are exactly the same through those models. What changes is the pre-fitted cartridge and also the supplied platter. The beauty of this is you can actually start out with an RT82 and upgrade either the stylus or the platter later down the line when you've got the money, and effectively end up with an RT85. That said, it is significantly more expensive to build an RT85 piecemeal by the tune of about $100 more. So if you have the money at the moment, I would recommend going as high up the range as you can possibly afford, as yes, it does work out significantly more expensive, but it's nice to know that the RT82 isn't a dead end in terms of the turntable, and you can make those incremental improvements if you choose to further down the line. If you'd like to see how this progression works for yourself, you can head over to their website where they've got a handy little comparison chart like this here. So it starts at that base model, the RT80, through to the RT81 Plus, which is the previous one that I reviewed, which comes with that Audio-Technica VM95E cartridge, and now the acrylic platter mat, and also the same isolation feet as the Reference series. So they've done some upgrades on that original RT81, but in terms of the Reference series of turntables, of course, we start at a cartridge that is the OM10 from Ortofon, and we move through the Ortofon Red, Ortofon Blue, and then there's now this Nagaoka MP110 option. It is the RT85 that gives you the upgrade from the aluminum, or aluminium as we say here in the UK, platter to the acrylic platter, which is a significant upgrade. Before we move on to the specifics of the RT85, I should state as well that the Reference series of turntables do not come with a built-in Phono preamp. So if you're looking for something that has a built-in Phono stage and you're on a budget and you don't want to have to purchase a separate one, you're probably better off looking at the RT81 Plus, which is obviously a review that I've done in the past. So if you want to check out that review, go to the link that'll be in the top corner of this screen now. But let's go into those Reference series specifics, and more importantly, the RT85 itself. The RT85 features an MDF plinth, which has to be said is significantly thicker and weightier than much of the contemporaries in competition with this at this price point. You know, particularly those sort of very lightweight composite fibre plinths that you've seen at this price point from a lot of the options coming out from the likes of Riga and Project, for example, that I feel are quite flimsy and feel fairly, actually, dare I say, a little bit on the cheap feeling side compared to something like this. But it is a layered MDF, which means that it's also very good at controlling those unwanted unwanted resonances that we don't want getting into the audio signal. So it's great for that too. But if that wasn't enough in terms of resonances, is as well the feet that it comes with, the spike style rubberized feet, which are suspended, are absolutely superb at absorbing unwanted shock and vibrations, but also minimizing the contact area that we have with the surface that your turntable is on, so that we reduce the amount of noise and vibration that can actually, the contact points that enable that transfer to happen. These are also height adjustable, which is another thing that makes it stand out significantly from the much of the competition at this price point, whereby you've got to use bits of beer mats and pennies and God knows what else to kind of try and level that turntable. Another really nice feature is the motor, which is a servo motor located further away on the side here from the platter, which offers better noise isolation from the motor itself. But because it's a servo motor, it also helps keep the playback speed much more consistent. Servo motors have a feedback mechanism that constantly analyzes the playback speed to make sure that we're on track, and any maybe deviations that might happen in the process from the mechanics or anything in terms of slippage and that kind of side of things, it will make sure that we continually bring it back on track. And this particular servo motor analyzes and checks the speed 500 times a second. Just to give you an idea of how much of an upgrade this is, the RT81 Plus DC motor states a wow and flutter of 0.2%, which, while this is under the amount of tolerance that people can actually hear, the RT85 does indeed state a better figure of just 0.07%. Both the RT85 and the N model benefit from that upgrade to an acrylic platter, which are well known for being absolutely superb at dampening and controlling resonances, both from external sources but also from the actual playback process itself, that process of modulating the groove with your stylus and cantilever. We get, because it's basically the same material as a vinyl record, we get what's known as a bit of a coupling effect, which means that any vibrations from that process can more easily diffuse away from the record surface and away from our audio signal, and we get a much clearer, much more transparent, cleaner, tighter sound in the process. In addition, because this platter weighs a hefty 3 pounds, it also contributes to that steady rotation speed, because the inertia that this creates means that we're less susceptible to deviations from that rotation speed. All of the Fluance Reference series turntables, of course, feature that aluminium S-shaped tonearm with the detachable head shells, which makes swapping out cartridges much easier than it would be with a one-piece straight tonearm. Though it is worth mentioning that the VTA, the vertical tracking angle, is factory set and you can't adjust this. So any cartridge that you do decide to fit onto the RT85 should be compatible with how this VTA is set up from the factory. While we're on the subject of this, actually, I'd just like to add a note about the MP-110. The Ortofon 2M Blue has a cartridge height of 18mm, while the MP-110 is 18.5. And while this is a very small difference, I was curious to see if Fluance adjusted the Tonearm VTA for each cartridge. And according to Fluance, they do adjust the VTA for the RT85N model to accommodate the MP-110's difference in stylus raking angle, the SRA in other words. That's the angle at which the stylus tracks, or rakes if you like, the groove. The MP-110 is said to have a soft damper, and the Fluance team found that adjusting the VTA to account for this made a big difference in the sonic performance. So does this mean that you can't put an Ortofon cartridge on the RT85N model? Well, no, but it does mean that this model is optimized for the Nagaoka. Very soon I'll reveal the differences in sound that I've heard between these two cartridges. One last feature I will mention before we move into the listening tests and also the conclusion on this turntable, though, is the inclusion of that auto stop feature that we found in also the RT81 Plus model. You may find this handy to prevent wear and tear on your stylus if you have a tendency to fall asleep of an evening's listening session, which can cause, unwanted wear and tear on your stylus as it rotates in the dead wax. So the tone arm will not lift from the record surface like some semi-automatic turntable designs, but instead the platter simply stops spinning, leaving the stylus in contact with your record until you come and lift it off the surface using the Q lever manually. The downside of this feature, of course, is that you may find on some records which are cut very close to the centre that it stops spinning the record prematurely before the record actually finishes. But fortunately, you can actually turn this feature off if this becomes a problem, using the handy switch, of course, on the rear of the turntable. Okay, so it's conclusion time. Should you buy the Fluance RT85N? First of all, let's talk about the two different cartridges, because I think this is very important in terms of your decision as to which one you might choose to buy. I found when I was spinning records on the RT85 that the Ortofon 2M Blue reveals a little more detail and has clearer instrument separation in the mid-range. There's also a little more zing up top, but that said, the MP-110 has a richer, more full representation, particularly in the low frequencies. It's a much more laid back and relaxed sound than the 2M Blue, which some listeners may prefer if a warmer sound is what you're seeking. If you'd like to hear the two cartridges for yourself, I've included an A/B sound test that you can hear over at my Patreon account. I will put the link in the description of this video so you can check it out for yourself. The Fluance Reference series of turntables have rightly earned a reputation as some of the best bang-for-buck models on the market. In many cases, they're offering a build quality that makes even some of the most established entry-level turntables feel cheap or uninspiring. Let me explain here exactly what I mean. If we take some of the Audio-Technica models, for example, sometimes in some aspects of these turntables, not all of them, they can feel a little bit plasticky perhaps, or maybe a tad flimsy. The Fluance RT85 certainly doesn't feel like that. And also, where some of the Project and Riga models can feel very minimalistic perhaps and a tad basic, the Fluance models offer something that arguably, in many ways, retains a little more luxury. And I must stress, I am not talking about all of the models from these brands, of course. I'm talking more about equivalent models at similar price points. Having reviewed two of Fluance's turntables now, I'm getting a real sense of how the company appears to strike a middle ground between the audiophile purism and also the lifestyle element in their product design. Many purists will argue that models from the likes of Riga and Project are better engineered when it comes to the basic playback mechanics of the bearings, for example, and the Tonearm designs. And while there is some merit in this 100% focus on the mechanics at the expense of all aesthetics and the experience of using a deck can leave some of the more affordable models feeling a little utilitarian. For most people getting into vinyl or returning to the hobby, for example, it's very difficult to argue with the balance of aesthetics, the user experience and the sound quality on offer here. Fluance, I think, have successfully struck a balance between all three of these aspects, and even better, they've achieved it at a price that's undoubtedly shaking up the market. That concludes today's review. Let me know if you have any questions down in that comment section as always, and if you want to support the channel in what I do here, then check out the links in the description of this video where you could purchase, for example, this turntable. It's an affiliate link. I get a very small commission at no extra cost to you. There's also the regular sponsors and partners that provide discount codes to Sound Matters viewers that you can take advantage of. And of course, don't forget, I now have a Patreon account where you can get exclusive content each and every single month, including those kind of examples of the two different cartridges so you can hear exactly how they sound for yourself. If you're new to this channel, please do consider subscribing. I would love to have you on board. But until that next video, folks, keep enjoying the music, spin some records, and I'll see you then. Cheers.